When you're beginning your binge eating disorder recovery journey, you're likely to feel overwhelmed about where to begin and maybe even a little hopeless about how successful you think you're going to be. Today, I'm going to share one of my favorite tools that I use with my clients in their binge eating disorder recovery journey so that you can feel more confident in your recovery. Managing an eating disorder can be a lonely journey. For in-depth information and strategies for managing your eating disorder, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell in the corner so you're notified when I publish a new video every Wednesday. I'm Meredith MacKenzie of Parallel Wellness. I'm a registered clinical counselor, eating disorders therapist, and doctoral graduate student. In my work with hundreds of clients with eating disorders, I've helped them to loosen the grips of their eating disorder so they can live fulfilling lives with freedom from food and compensatory behaviors. Now it's your turn. Before we get started, I want to provide a disclaimer. While I am a registered clinical counselor working with eating disorders, the information in this video is for informational and educational purposes only. If you are concerned that you may have an eating disorder, please reach out to your physician, dietitian, or eating disorder therapist today. First, I want to point out what is different about using a mindful eating log like the one I'm introducing to you today, and something that's a little more mainstream like an app that you can find in the App Store, such as Fitbit or a calorie counter or MyFitnessPal or anything like that. And the first big difference is the intention of these two ways of recording what you're eating. When you use one of these mainstream apps, let's be honest, the intention of them is around weight loss. It's on counting the amount of calories that you're eating, the quality of food that you're eating, how big your portions are. Maybe it's about macros and whatever, amount of detail they go into. But ultimately the focus of these apps is weight loss. And this is where a mindful eating log is very strictly different from this. With a mindful eating log, the intention of the log is to build awareness and attention to what's triggering you to eat the way that you're eating. Is it the types of food? Is it the scenario? Is it who you're with? Lots of information that you can gather to better understand how you relate to food, as well as the emotions that you're experiencing when you're eating food. The intention of a mindful eating log is not to lose weight. It is not to count calories. It is not to qualify or really evaluate the foods that you're eating in any way. The purpose of it is very, very different. So for some of you watching this, that might stand out as a major difference, especially if you've been binge eating and you're considering that you would like to lose weight. I don't want to necessarily go into why that should or shouldn't be your goal at this point, but my mindful eating log is not focused on those things, and I hope that it actually provides more freedom from all of these counting calories and the stress that comes with restriction, and actually helps you find freedom from binge eating disorder and that cycle of the binge eating cycle that continues and continues and continues. You might find that the more you spend time with some of these more traditional, conventional apps, those things just continue. And that's what the science tells us as well. So I'd like to invite you to the other side where we use a mindful eating log and try things differently. Another big difference between this mindful eating log and conventional apps is that the mindful eating log, rather than getting into the nitty-gritty of what it is that you're eating, really takes a zoomed out approach and looks at the week as a whole and looks for patterns and ways to help you find a better way to help manage your eating and manage your binge eating. And something else you're gonna notice is that it's not as fancy as an app. It's not high tech. It's sitting down with a piece of paper and a pencil and really being mindful and in the moment as you go through this process. It's not meant to be an easy on the go, let's do two things at once and not be mindful activity. It's meant to be a mindful activity. So you'll notice that there's a big difference there, but I also hope that this act of sitting down with your mindful eating log on a consistent basis also helps you to be present with what you're feeling and how you're relating to your food, and to be more in the moment with it, and to have that intention of going through your eating disorder recovery in this more mindful and gentle way, rather than trying to split your time in your mind between, riding the bus and filling out an app or quickly jotting something down after a meal. So let's get into the mindful eating log. And if you'd like a copy for yourself, I've actually updated the mindful eating log for this video. So you're the first people who are using this new and improved mindful eating log, but I provided a link in the description box down below. Download a copy for yourself and go along with us as we progress through the video and practice filling out the mindful eating log together. So welcome to my mindful eating log, and here it is. Like I said, it's nothing too fancy. It's a simple document. It has room for 7 days of the week. And as I said before, it's meant to be a zoomed out perspective on what it is that's happening for you. So we'll go through this gradually together, and I'm going to provide some examples of what somebody might say when they're using this type of mindful eating log and how you can use this for your own benefit. So to start, you want to make the commitment that you're going to be filling this out for a complete week. It works best if you, like I said, are able to use it where you can have the full zoomed out perspective of what your week looks like. And so we'll start by putting in the date. So if we're going to say, I'm just going to say January 1st. I'm not sure what date you're going to start this on. And we put in 7 days. So now you have the full week, and the way it's laid out so that you can have 3 complete meals. And because of the amount of space that this log takes up, if you're wanting to tack on your snacks, or if you're noticing you're having more than 3 meals in the day, please just photocopy, make another copy, and just tack it onto the bottom of this. It's not meant to be perfect, really. I wish I could have everything that I wanted in this mindful eating log, but it just wasn't possible. But the way it's laid out right now, it's laid out for you to have 3 meals for the day. And we just start with different information. So let's say for you on your first day, you knew that you were having your breakfast. You know, maybe for you it was, I don't really want to be eating a whole lot in the day. I had a bad binge last night. I really want to limit what I'm eating today. So I'm not going to eat until I start to feel really hungry at 11 a.m. And so you hold off to 11 a.m. And some of the emotions you might feeling, maybe you came into work and there was a lot of stressful stuff going on, so you feel stressed. You might feel a little self-conscious eating at work. And maybe you're feeling a little disconnected. Let's say you haven't been as in contact with your friends. And this is Monday morning and you're realizing that you wish you had more contact with them. And the hunger level before the meal for this one, let's say you were pretty hungry because you hadn't eaten breakfast earlier in the morning and really tried to hold off as long as you could. So let's put hunger at, say, a 9. Now the meal setting, now because you're at work, we'll say this was at work at my desk. So let's write down some of the things that you've eaten. So you're at work, and maybe because you didn't come prepared, because you were trying to avoid this meal altogether, you didn't bring anything packed for yourself. So you head out either to the vending machines within your building, or you're at the local 7-Eleven around the corner, or the coffee shop, and you get a muffin, and then you see that there's something really tasty there. There's a cookie, so you get a cookie, and you get yourself a coffee, and that's what you're gonna have for your breakfast. And after that, maybe you feel pretty, satiated, but because it wasn't a whole lot of food, you're gonna say maybe this was a 7. Then we get to the next time you eat, and let's say you eat your lunch at 1 p.m. at work. And that stress that you were feeling earlier in the day, you're still feeling it. And then what else can we say? You're maybe also feeling a bit happier because you're sitting with some of the friends that you like at your work. So you'd still be at work, but you're at the lunchroom. I'm also planning this or writing this thinking these things do not exist right now during COVID for many of us at our workplaces, but we're going to imagine a situation. So you're sitting with friends. And the hunger before this meal, you'd had a little bit, you had a little bit earlier, so you're not feeling really, really hungry, but we're gonna still say you're at like a 6 because you didn't have a huge breakfast. And the items you're eating. So maybe this time you brought your sandwich with you, and you brought some soup, and you brought an apple, and you had some grapes as well. You had a full meal. So after this meal, you're feeling pretty satiated. You've had a good, solid meal, and so you'd say you're satiated at a 10. So now it comes to dinner time. And let's say that you've been really busy, you weren't able to grab a snack in between lunch and dinner. You've been busy helping your kids with doing their homework, you've cleaned up the house a little bit. Now it's finally your turn to eat, and it's now 8 p.m. by the time you're having your dinner. And emotions, you're exhausted. It's been a long day. Maybe you're also feeling still some of that stress because something's happened at work and you're carrying that with you. You could still be feeling disconnected from friends that you were hoping you'd be able to connect with. And by now you're pretty hungry because there's been, 7 hours between your last meal and dinner time. And so your hunger level, let's put this as 10. And you're sitting by yourself. Let's say there's no partner home with you, it's just you on your own. Home alone, and in front of the TV. Okay, and so what might you eat? So let's say you made yourself a stir fry for dinner, and that was good, and you enjoyed that. But because you're sitting in front of the TV, because you felt so stressed all day, you start to feel those urges and that desire to binge. And you have some cookies after that. You might have some ice cream. And the list goes on of what it is that you're having. Think about whatever might be part of a typical binge for you. And because this hunger level started so high at a 10, you're in a pretty vulnerable position. You haven't had a lot to eat earlier in the day. You didn't really get a lot at breakfast time. And then maybe you had a solid lunch, but because of the time between lunch and dinner and all of the emotions that you're carrying, this ends up turning into a binge evening. Satiation after. First off, you're probably not overly aware of it as it's happening. It more so hits you after the fact when you've already eaten quite a few things of food and you're recognizing you're actually very uncomfortably full. So you could even say that this is like a 10 plus situation where it feels more than what typical satiation would be or more than what you would be happy with because now it's quite painful. So you've got that as your satiation. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a few more of these, and then I'm going to give an example when I come back of what this might look like if you did a 7-day look at your eating. So I'll be right back with that. So I've gone ahead and I filled out the next couple of days. If I looked into January 2021, it looks like January 1st and 2nd are going to be a Thursday, Friday, and then a Saturday, Sunday on the 3rd and 4th, and then Monday will be January 5th. So I tried to get my head into the space where a client that I might work with might come in. So as we showed on this first day, we might end up having a binge at the end of the day. So I thought, where might that person start off the next day? And so for January 2nd, they might wake up feeling some guilt and shame and stress about things. It's not uncommon. Sometimes people then respond to those feelings by choosing to skip a meal. And that's where that restriction side of the binge eating cycle comes from, where you're restricting in order to prevent binges when really it ends up actually exacerbating the challenge for most people. So this person might have skipped breakfast. By the time it came to lunch, they were still feeling really stressed and ashamed of what they had done the night before, but they're really hungry. So maybe they still ate. They had a level 10 of hunger. They ate with their friends, but they had a smaller portion. And I'm trying to be careful with what I'm including in this mindful eating log because it is just an example. I don't want to put down any foods as though that they are the right foods or the wrong foods. There's no judgment on what anybody is eating. It's really just for me to demonstrate how we think about our food and the type of labels that we place on our food can impact what we're eating and how we feel about it. And sometimes it is the quality of food. If we're getting enough variety, then it helps to satiate our bodies. I am not a registered dietitian. I do not claim to know about what are the right foods in portions or variety or anything like that. I really subscribe to an intuitive eating way of being. And if your body feels hungry and gives you the cue for food, that's a signal that it needs to eat. and to do so in a way that feels good for your body and listening to those cues. So this tool can be really helpful for that as well. So in this example where this person might have eaten a small restricted meal, by the time they get to dinner, they might feel really overwhelmed because they've been dealing with all kinds of emotions throughout the day. Their hunger level is at a 10. And so by 5 p.m. when they get home, even though dinner is not yet made, they find that they start snacking. And this is a really common experience for people. They've restricted for the large portion of the day that by the time they get home, they're hungry, even if their meal is not ready. So this person might have eaten the meal with their family, but then it could have resulted in a binge afterwards. And again, leaving that at a 10 plus in terms of satiety and how full they feel. So then we have the person waking up on the weekend. 9 a.m., they decide to have breakfast with their family, and they have a medium portion this time. And with the hunger level at 7 before they started, they then feel a satiety of 8 when they're finished. And this is kind of them finding their way back to their equilibrium. 1 p.m., they might notice that they're feeling feelings of feeling bored or just uncertain with what they want to do with their day. Sometimes feelings like that can impact the way we eat as well. Hunger level of 8 for lunchtime, at home alone eating, and again, a medium portion, eating leftovers from the night before, and having a snack by 3:30. And so I wanted to put in some snacks to show how that might impact this person. By eating a snack, it might actually stave off some of the hunger or at least satiate their body for a while so that they're able to eat dinner at 6:30 and they're not going into the meal with the high 10 like they were the previous 2 days. They're at a 7 right now. They're with family and let's say they ordered in pizza as a family, didn't eat beyond comfort. This wasn't a binge meal, and they finished the meal at a satiety of 9, and so that felt good for them. Now going up to the Sunday. So let's say Sunday morning they wake up and they're feeling in a pretty great mood. They feel really connected with their family. They are, hungry enough when they have their food, and they had brunch together and there was no binge. And so you can imagine what types of foods people eat at brunch. There's no judgment on what people are eating for their foods, but that this was something that was an enjoyable meal for them, and they feel at a 10, like they maybe ate, to a point where their body was like, oh, okay, that's enough food, I'm good. But they're not uncomfortable in any way. Then at 2 p.m., they're maybe on the go and interested in some of the activities their family are doing. They're feeling happy, everything's going well, and maybe they catch some food on the way to wherever they're going. And it's a large meal, it's larger than they would have thought they wanted, and they feel uncomfortably full from this meal. Now, the reason I included this in the mindful eating log is I wanted to show that this person's mindset might have been in a really positive mindset before they went into this meal. They had no intention of binging, but because they have the experience of binge eating previously, they experience this meal in a negative way. That eating more than what their body feels comfortable eating ends up triggering thoughts or beliefs about themselves that I should not have eaten in that way, and resulting in feelings of shame and just being frustrated and angry with themselves. So I showed that this person then maybe put off dinner and said, oh, I'm not going to eat dinner now because now I'm upset with myself for what I ate. Again, I'm not saying that somebody should be feeling these ways, but I just really want to show how difficult it can be. So say this person then says, I'm going to skip dinner, I'm not going to eat it. And then that results in a late evening binge because you are hungry. Your body does need additional food. Even if you eat a large meal earlier in the day, it doesn't mean that you're not needing to eat later in the day. So this binge then results in a 10 plus in terms of satiety and just feeling really uncomfortable. So I wanted to give an alternative. Let's imagine this person has zoomed out, like I suggested, and they have seen the trend of what's happening. They're starting to see the trend that when they skip meals, it makes them more hungry, and then they end up binging at the next meal. That when they experience negative emotions, it can lead to binge eating. And when they judge themselves harshly for what they're eating, it can lead to binge eating. Also, just maybe not planning. So if we looked at day 1 on January 1st, not planning and kind of just going with what was available at the store might also be something that sets them up to binge eat or not eat adequately for what their body is needing. So on January 5th, this is Monday, this person maybe ate at 7 a.m. and they're feeling well rested from the weekend. They're feeling confidently. Their hunger level's at a 6, and they have breakfast with their family at home. And again, not saying that this is like the right food to be eating, but I tried to give an example where this person's eating carbohydrates, they're eating protein, they're eating fats, and they're getting them all in one meal so that they're feeling really satiated with what it is that they're eating. So now I wanted to show you what it might look like if you use this mindful eating log to the best of its ability. And that would be if you zoomed out and you really had a look at everything that was going on over the previous couple of days, and you recognize that there was a pattern going on, that on days when meals were skipped, like skipping breakfast, or small portions were eaten when it didn't satiate hunger and you only got like a 5 on your satiety, or when you ate specific foods that you then felt really guilty about afterwards, or if you weren't prepared and then therefore, you know, didn't have the same satiety at a meal that you might otherwise. What it might look like if you try to change that. Again, I want to really highlight, I have no judgment on what it is that you choose to eat. It's really about using this tool for yourself to understand how the foods that you're choosing impact you, both from a hunger and satiety level, but also an emotional level. So let's say on Monday morning, this person woke up and they felt confident and well rested from the weekend, and they decided at 7 a.m. they were going to have their breakfast at home with their family, didn't have a huge hunger rate at the beginning of it, but that they ate something that was substantial. They had a smoothie with protein and avocado. And again, I'm not saying that this is what you should be eating, but what I do want to highlight is that this person now is not cutting out any specific food groups. They're eating all the food groups at one meal, and they're following it up with a snack a few hours later. So they're not giving their body time for their blood sugar levels to drop and for hunger to really increase to a substantial amount. So they felt at a 9 in terms of satiety following that meal. And, work was still stressful. They still felt stressed out by the time lunchtime came around, but they weren't super hungry the way they were earlier in the week. Their hunger was only at a 5 because they had that snack at 10 o'clock. They had their workroom, lunchroom meal with their friends, and then they also followed it up with a snack again at 3:30. I really tried to focus as well with this meal to show that this person was eating all different types of food groups, not saying that they should or shouldn't be eating anything in particular. They were satiated by the end of this meal, and then at 6:30 they felt calm, they felt connected with their family. They were probably tired, and not in all cases, but usually eating a substantial amount where you're eating food regularly, consistently, in a balanced way. It also helps regulate our emotions. So this person might also notice that they're feeling a little more connected, they're feeling a little more regulated emotionally. They have a 5 at hunger when they're about to go eat their dinner, and they eat with their family, they eat the meal that was planned, and they're able to eat a food, ice cream, which may in other situations signified that they were going to have a binge. But in this situation, because the emotions were so good, because they had eaten well throughout the day, and they were getting enough then, they didn't binge eat. And I can't promise that this will be the case for every single person, but it does really help when you're trying to manage your binge eating. And if you're curious to know more about binge eating and the binge eating cycle and the science of all of that, I have created a video on that on my channel, so please go check that out. It'll help bring some of this back to reality for you. But I wanted to show you just how I use this mindful eating log in my practice with my clients. Really, it's an investigation tool. It's a way to look at what it is that you're eating and then find and highlight the areas that are problem areas so that you can feel more successful. So I hope that this is helpful, and I hope that this is something that you can use for yourself in your own approach to your binge eating disorder recovery. In the coming weeks, I'm going to be digging more into binge eating disorder recovery, and I want to know your questions. Please comment below and let me know what burning questions you have about binge eating disorder, recovery, strategies, tools, anything like that. I'm happy to answer in my upcoming video, which will be a question and answer video. Now, if you're wanting a little more privacy and you don't want to leave a comment below, please send me a direct message at Parallel Wellness on Instagram, and I'll be happy to add your question to the video as well. I won't be publishing anyone's names in this video. Now, you're gonna wanna check out the rest of the videos on my channel on binge eating disorder and eating disorders more in general. I provided links in the description box down below on a few that I think you're gonna find really interesting. And if you like learning more about tools and strategies that you can use on your binge eating disorder recovery, I'm gonna be covering a few different apps that I have found along the way in my upcoming videos in the coming weeks. If you've enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with a friend or anyone that you think would benefit from learning more about binge eating disorder or using mindful eating logs for their binge eating disorder recovery. And I'll see you in the next video on Wednesday.